JAN-AgentC! I know the sound guy loves that. Hey, what's going on? My homies that hang out with me at Sequoia there, at the youth center in Sequoia. What's up? How you doing? CP Services, RMWB, Sequoia, youth workers, and all the good people of Janvier and Zach and all of that area of RMWB. Good afternoon. How are you? I'm good. You want to hear something funny? I'm not drunk, but I have not had a carbonated beverage for 4 weeks. We started broadcasting today because we do all the sessions. We do all the coaching sessions in one day. So we started this morning with the one RMWB, the mid-level leaders of RMWB, and then the frontline employees of RMWB, and then we had a session with Fort Chip, and we had a session with Fort McMurray. And then we had another session for this national thing that we're doing, and now you. And so I decided that I was going to have a soda. Now, I have not had a carbonated sugar beverage for 1 month. So I totally detoxed, right? I totally got it all out of my system. I seriously think I'm on crack right now. This is like crack. I'm totally wired. I'm just like, ah! Anyways, how are you? All of my good friends from there in Janvier. Good to see you. Well, good to be seen. How's that? It's good to be seen. What are we doing? Coaching session. Coaching session. So we were all sitting there in the Sequoia, and we've got the couches, and the chairs, and the tables, and we're all hanging out, right? And we all met the other day. It was a good meeting. We all chatted. And I sat on that little, whatever that thing is, not a credenza. It's too low to be a credenza, like a TV table kind of a thing. I sat there, and you guys were all sitting around, and we were just having a good old chat. And for the last week, 2 weeks now, we've been talking about an agent of change. The agent of change is the individual that understands, demonstrates, and exerts influence by building trusting relationships to act as a catalyst for change. And I know that we've had some new people sign up since the last time. It's crazy, Jeff. New people signing up. We're 5 weeks into the program. New people signing up. It's crazy. New people signing up. So welcome to the new people that signed up. How are you? I'll get to meet you next week in Janvier. So today we take your questions. I'm about to. What if I have a sugar collapse during the broadcast? What if I I just blow off? Hopefully I won't do that. So you can ask your questions. Questions at rmwbleaders.ca. Questions at rmwbleaders.ca. And for that to work, Margie needs to have the device to answer the questions. So we're going to throw that to Margie here. Big catch. Live television. That's what this is, live television. We just throw things in the studio. So questions at rmwbleaders.ca, or of course Margie is in the chat box, and you can ask your questions there. We can talk about listening. Did you send out that survey? Huh? Did you? Did you listen to people like they were going to die at midnight? Did you do that? What about your leadership style? Your leadership approach? Energizer, nurturer. What about those approaches? So, what did you do with the information that we talked about? And today, we'll unpack that. And we'll talk that through. We'll unpack it, and we'll talk it through. So, today, you can ask your questions. I've got some thoughts. We got 35 minutes, whatever it is, to hang out together. And the purpose, for those of you that are new, the purpose of this time together, the purpose of our interaction in this format is for me to be a resource. For you to ask your questions and for me to be a resource. Now, it's only effective if you ask questions. It's not effective if we all just sit here and I just talk. It's most effective when you ask questions out of your situations, out of your challenges, out of your leadership experiences, and what you're going through today, conceptually or reality, either way. You're asking questions. and I'll give you my take. And you may like it, you may not. In between the questions, I have some things I'd like to talk about for sure. Some things I'd like to address for sure. But in doing so, really this time is for you. Now, it's most advantageous if you send in your questions beforehand. And I had a couple of you that did, that sent in questions beforehand. That's always the best. It's always best to send in your questions beforehand. But if you're not able to send in your questions beforehand, then you just come and you ask them. And then we have 45 minutes together. Now, next week, when we meet, we're going to talk about systems. We're going to talk about systems. And that's going to be a great 3 weeks. And in that 3 weeks, you'll have more information than you know what to do with. You'll have so much information you won't be able to cover it in 3 weeks, and you'll have to come back and look at it 4 and 5 months from now, because it's a ton of information. Okay, let's talk about that survey, right? So we did an exercise when we were together there, right? And well, let me back up for a second. We talked about trust, that the key to getting things done today was building trust, and that I wasn't going to be able to bark people into doing something. I wasn't going to be able to scream people into doing something. I wasn't going to be able to shout people into doing something. I wasn't going to be able to intimidate people into doing something. That probably wasn't going to fly today, because people aren't going to put up with that. Now, people will come to work. Look, they'll come to work. They have mortgages to pay, or they have bills to pay, or they have kids to feed, or whatever. They have their diet soda habit to support. I was going to say crack habit, but I didn't think that was going to be very positive. So they have their diet soda habit to support, and so they have to do these things. They have to work. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get there all. The way you're going to get there all is build a trusting relationship and influence them. And we walked through what some of the keys to trust were. And we walked through what some of the keys to building trust with another human being was. And I gave you an exercise. And the first exercise I gave you was intangible. It was, hey, I want you to listen. And I want you to listen like people are going to die at midnight. I mean, you need to really listen. You need to give them your full attention. You need to give them your full heart, your full soul. All that you are, you need to give to them. You need to give all that you are to the human being that happens to be in front of you at any given time. Because people are so used to talking today, that, and whether talking is literally talking or 140 characters, people are so used to pushing information out today that listening has become a lost art. And that if we really want to be effective as a leader, we'll take the time to listen with our eyes, we'll listen with our ears, we'll listen with our intuition. We will really listen to what people have to say. We'll listen. Like people are going to die at midnight. Because if they were going to be leaving the planet at midnight, we'd focus. That was the intangible. How'd that go? How'd that go? How'd that go in your house? How'd that go with your kids? How'd that go with your spouse? My daughter, Nia, called me on that the other day, since the last time I saw you. She was telling me a long story, and I was staring off in the distance, thinking about something completely different. And she's like, Dad. I was like, what? She's like, did you hear anything I said? Yes. Well, no. Because she's old enough now to know when I'm lying. So I was like, well, yes, no, I want to know, I wasn't listening. So we all do it. But did you focus? And then I gave you a tangible exercise. Right? I gave you a tangible exercise. And that tangible exercise was pretty straightforward. Send out a survey. Send out a survey. And the purpose of sending out that survey was to do what? So that you could gain feedback, that you could gain insight, so you could gain information. But it was also deeper and broader. The purpose of that survey was so that you had a proactive way to build a trusting relationship. So did you send out the survey? Now, if you did, you had mixed results probably. Some people sent it in, some people didn't. Some people gave their input, some people didn't. Some people took it serious, some people didn't even respond. And you said to yourself, what am I supposed to do with this information? Aha, let me give you some insight now. So you had 3 questions, right? 3 simple questions. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Suggestions for my improvement. And if you could send me back to school, what class would you make me take? Interesting. I would strongly encourage you to thoughtfully consider that this survey gives you tremendous insight into how you're doing. Now, automatically, our eyes go to question number 2, right? What am I doing wrong? But I would resist that temptation, and I would go to question number 1 first. That's why it's question number, you got it, 1. Question number 1, what am I doing right? Now, here's what this can tell you. First, it can validate what you already knew. I want to be a great listener, and they say, you're doing a great job of listening. Validation. Okay, cool. Or, I want to be a great listener. You're a very hard worker. They see some value in something else that I'm doing. Now, it doesn't mean you're not a great listener. It just meant that they felt like there was something else of value that made a more significant impact than perhaps something you thought you were bringing of value. So it helps you really clarify what it is that people value that you do. What am I doing right? It doesn't mean you're not a good listener. It just means that there was something else that they said this is of more value. And then we go to number 2. What am I doing wrong? Suggestions for my improvement. Now, this is a tough one. This is tough. Number 1, because it can be painful, right? It could be painful. What am I doing wrong? Ugh. You know, you're not a very good listener. Ooh. You're mean sometimes. You're unorganized. Ooh. You never give us any freedom. Ooh. Could hurt. Or you could say, 1, I'm going to look for trends. Because one specific comment shouldn't spin me. Because one specific comment is just one specific comment. It's an outlier, right? It could be far afield from what everyone else is saying. So you have to take that one comment that's unlike all the others with a grain of salt. But that doesn't mean you ignore it. It means that you thoughtfully consider it. And you say to yourself, well, no one else is saying that. And since no one else is saying it, I'm not going to completely discount it, but I am going to look at it and go, why do they think that, I wonder? And is there anything that I'm doing, saying, is there any ways that I'm acting that could lead them to that perspective? That could lead them to that conclusion? That could lead them to give me that feedback? And if you're sincere about that, and you really look introspectively, and look at it from all sides, then it's a worthy exercise. And you could come to the conclusion that you could say this, I have no idea how any reasonable person could come to that conclusion. No one else is saying it. I've looked in the depth and breadth of my heart. I've looked at my actions on a daily basis, and I have no idea how they could come to that conclusion. If you do that, then you say this, never mind. Never mind. You just never mind. I have done everything. I've looked at it from every angle. I've looked for other trends. I don't see anybody else commenting on that. So you know what? Thank you so much. Boom. Move on. Now, that's not to be disparaging. That's just to say thank you so much. Thank you for your feedback. I don't see it. And not that I don't see it arrogantly, I don't see it, but I don't see it. I've looked. I've listened to all these other people. Nobody else is saying that. So you take it, thank you, and move on. Now, what I'm looking for is that trend. Now, if I hear listening, then guess what? I got a problem with listening. Or I have somehow giving the impression that I'm not very good at it. So either way, I got to change, right? Either way, the message is you better change. And then the third question. If you could send me back to school, what class would you make me take? What's the point of that, Ian? Well, really, it's to validate number 2. It's a whimsical way of asking, the exact same question. You're basically asking the exact same question. You're saying, what am I doing wrong? But you're saying it by saying, if you could send me back to school, what class would you make me take? So The third question asks in a different way to ensure that there's some consistency. I think you need to work on your listening. I think you should take a listening class. Now, here's the funny thing. I think you need to work on your listening. I think you need to work on a class of communication. Same thing. But you're looking for consistency. So now, that's what the survey can mean to you. But what do you do with it? That's the question. What do I do with that survey? Here's what I would do with it. First of all, I would do that synthesization, right? I'd synthesize the information like I just described in a thoughtful and meaningful way. Then I would meet with the people. The people who gave me the feedback. Now, I wouldn't pick out any one person necessarily. I just gathered the group together. Now, if that's not possible, maybe I would go and meet with them one-on-one. But I'm basically going to say this. Hey, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the wisdom. Thank you. And here's the trends that I saw. There was a significant number of respondents that said blank. There was many people that said I needed to work on listening, so I'm going to. Or there was many people that said I needed to work on being on time, so I'll work on that. There was many people that said I needed to work on whatever, so I will. Very simple, right? Very simple, very easy. So I've done two things here. I've been transparent, I've been upfront, I've been honest, and I've said you can be a part of helping me to grow. You can be a part of helping me to be better. And I appreciate that you've done so. And now, here's my plan to get better. Here's my plan to get better. Now, stop and think about that. First, you sent out a survey, which would make people go, what is going on? Then you took the information and synthesized it. Then you're coming back to the people that gave you the feedback and saying, not only did I take it, I analyzed it, I picked out some things, and I'm going to get better at them. And here's my plan to get better at them. Well, how would I come up with a plan? What do you think that whole change continuum was about? The whole change continuum was so you could come up with a plan. Are you willing to change? Go get some education about the subject matter. Understand it. Write it, read it, hear it, think it, talk it, so you can go do it. And then build your plan. And you're going to take that plan, you're going to have people hold you accountable. Who's going to hold you accountable? The people that filled out the survey. And then you're going to get better. And you're going to build trust. Because those people are going to look at you and go, I cannot believe they sent out this survey. I not only can't believe he sent out the survey, I can't believe he's actually talking to us about it. And not only can I believe that, but he's actually going to do something with it. And then a few months later, he actually got better at it. Are you serious? Now think about how many of those steps you rarely see in our society. You rarely see leaders that are willing to be transparent. You rarely see leaders who are willing to come forward with the feedback they got and said, here's what I heard. And you rarely see leaders that will take that feedback and do something with it, let alone get better. Those people are going to look and go like this. I cannot believe he's doing this. And then step by step by step. Wow, this is real. Well, what about the cynical ones? At minimum, the cynical ones will have to say this. Holy crap, he's actually doing it. Now, what if you did it 3 times a year, every 4 months? And every time you hit it with the same urgency and you hit it with the same enthusiasm. At some point, those people would start to realize you're sincere about wanting to be a better leader. That you're sincere about wanting to be the best leader you can be for them. And it'll be in that sincerity and authenticity that you'll be able to influence the dynamic. And that's a pretty amazing thing. It's a pretty amazing thing. Go ahead, Margie's got a question.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
I sent my survey out, but I haven't had any replies. I'm hung up on pestering people as they might answer question number 2. Thoughts? Ron.
Okay, so sent out if I hear correctly, sent out the survey, hasn't got anything back. Doesn't want to pester him. Is that what he said?
Correct.
Okay, Big Ron. So here's the thing. I think you have to send it out again. I do. And I think you have to tell him why you're sending it out. I think you got to be authentic and sincere. You got to talk from your heart and just say, I truly want to get better. And the only way I can get better if I hear the truth from everybody. Use me as the excuse. I'm doing this program. I have to do this survey. And please, it doesn't help me any. And if you really care about me, or if you like me, or even if you hate me, I need to know what you think of my performance. And you might even say what you just said in that email, because you said they don't want to answer number 2, right? Mm-hmm. You might say, hey, look, I'm taking answer number 2, and I'm using it to get better, and that there are some action steps that will come after this. So, regrettably, I do think you have to pester them a little bit. Just like I got to pester you guys, right? I'm sending you reminders all the time, right? Okay? I say that in love. I never pester you, Ron. But I do think, especially in today's hectic life, you may need to send it out again. Now, a little technique you could use, put a deadline on it. Say, I've got to do this assignment. I need your feedback because it's going to help me. It's going to help me, and then be tangible. It's going to help me pick out some things to improve on and build a plan to improve on them. And then over the coming weeks, I'm going to focus on improving. So I really need your feedback. So you might have to unpack it a little more to explain the context in which you're doing it. I would add that. I might even add a deadline. I need it by this date. And then I would add something personal. And I sincerely do respect you, I appreciate you, and I need your help by giving me insight and perspective that I don't see of myself. So don't worry, everybody. You're not going to crush me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Well, you might hurt my feelings, but you're not going to crush me. So just tell me the truth. That's the way that I would approach it. And I would keep coming back to them. And you might also expand who you sent the survey to if you're in a position where you have direct reports and you send it to your direct reports, but you also might send it to some peers. You might send it to people that you work with in the community if you're community-based and your purview is outside the 4 walls of an organization and you interact with other people in community-based projects, or you interact with people as a liaison or whatever. You may reach out to others beyond just within the 4 walls of the organization or within the chain of command to give an opportunity. In today's hectic life, somebody might say, oh, I got to fill out that survey. Oh, it's going to take forever. Just relieve that from it. Say, hey, I don't need a ton of information. Just give me your quick blush, your first over thought, that kind of a thing. Did you have a follow-up to that? No. So like Ron did, don't forget you can ask your questions at rmwbleaders.ca or in the chat box. So what I would say to summarize, clarify for them the purpose of the exercise, explain to them the context in which it's being done in. Secondly, explain very clearly how it is going to be used. I'm going to be taking it and using it to develop an improvement plan. And then 3, be very personal and sincere. This is important to me, and I'm asking you to give me feedback. I would take those 3 things, and you might add a deadline. I would take those 3 things and push it out. And that's the simplicity of it. That's the simplicity of it. Okay. So those were the 2 listening exercises that I had given you. One tangible and one intangible. And then we talked about, and we've unpacked, this whole idea of 100 cups of coffee, expanding the sphere of influence. And we said that we had to have an agent of change understood that the dynamics to getting things done were fundamentally different than they have been in the past. And that they had to do something to build the relationships with those people of influence. Now, if it's in the workplace, it looks something like this. You have this guy who's been in the organization for a long, long time but doesn't have a title, but runs his little corner of the world. Doesn't have a title, though, but runs his little corner of the world. Then you have a lady. She might have been here a short period of time. She has a title, and she's bringing new ways of doing business. And then you have another person who's been around for a long, long time, has a title, and is stuck in their ways. Well, all three are people of influence. One with title, some without title. And you've got to analyze those people of influence. Because you've got to analyze where you stand with them. Because you're probably not going to get anything done if you don't have some kind of alignment with the people of influence. Now, the same is true out in the community. Community builders. The same is true out in the community. Building those trusting relationships with the people of influence is critical to getting things done. Now, typically what we would do is we would go and engage that person of influence, and we schmooze them, get them on our side. Hey, buddy pal. Hey, friend of mine. Hey, woo! Whoop, whoop! That's what we would do. But that's not effective today, because people can see that coming, a million miles away. Instead, today, we're going to listen. We're going to listen. That's why we're working on listening. What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are their desires? What are their aspirations? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to do? And whether that's in the workplace or outside. And I'm trying to understand them to their satisfaction. Nothing more powerful than that. And then and only then do I talk about my thing and the thing I want to do and the thing I want to accomplish. Especially if it's somewhat in alignment, and this is where relatability comes in, especially if it's somewhat in alignment with where they're going. Well, that's funny. We're going the same place. Now, put this in the context of the work environment. If you can show an employee how their dreams, hopes, aspirations, wants, and desires are in alignment with the organization's, golden. You are golden. Well, I'm just doing this job to make the money because someday I want to go to blank. Okay, well, that's cool. If you did this, this, and this, you'd be able to make more money? Oh, I didn't know that. And if you do that, that, and this, you won't have a job? Oh, I didn't know that. Right. Get in alignment. For some of you that are more on the business side of this conversation, I still have yet to post up that coaching information, and I think it's going to bleed off into our systems dialogue, but either way, we'll get it up there. So for the community-minded people, which all of us are community-minded, how am I building these trusting relationships? For the manager, leader within a business context or supervisory context, because that could be business or anything, within that supervisory context, how do I build trusting relationships to improve performance? And I have yet to post that information for you, and I apologize. But I will. I will post that information. Because the agent of change knows how to change performance. So instead of going and selling something, let me convince you to get on board with what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is see how what you're already doing I can get in alignment with. How can I get in alignment with what you're doing? I had a lady one time that worked for me told me she wanted to be a nurse. I want to be a nurse. I don't want to work with you forever, Ian. And I said, well, you suck. No, I didn't say that. She said, I want to be a nurse. And I said, okay, you want to be a nurse? Let's talk about how what you're doing every day could actually prepare you to be a nurse. Now, there's nothing that she was doing on the surface that would seem to relate to the medical profession in any way, shape, or form until we realized she was dealing with people. Until we realized she was dealing with paperwork, until we realized she had to be accurate, until we realized that she had to be timely, until we realized that oftentimes she was under pressure. And we saw that she was under pressure, needed to have great customer service skills, she had to have great empathy, she had to be accurate and timely. As soon as we realized all that, as soon as she realized all that, she found that her job was relevant to her long-term goals. Was relevant to her long-term goals. I met with a young gal last night. She wants to be an intern for us. We were talking about her long-term goals. And you know what got her most excited? That the stuff that she would be doing would be in alignment with her long-term goals. So if I want to be a person of influence in that young intern's life to get the best from her, I'm listening for her goals, dreams, thoughts, aspirations, and desires. And then I'm saying to her, here's some cool things about what you'll be doing that completely is in alignment with what you want to do long term. She wants to be an ambassador someday. political science, blah, blah, blah. And then I just had to show her how what she was going to be doing, filing information, moving paperwork from here to there, could in any way, shape, or form be anywhere near being an ambassador. But we talked about accuracy, we talked about diligence, we talked about timeliness, we talked about some of the key ingredients that a person of that level of authority needed to have. And she walked out of that conversation very excited, ready to start, to do paperwork. And why are you laughing, Ian? I don't know. Because it's not brain surgery. I listened. And then I showed her how what she was going to do was in alignment with what we had to do. Well, what if it isn't in alignment? What if I go have those 100 cups of coffee and it isn't in alignment? Then you look and go like this, it's not in alignment. But thank you for letting me know what you're doing. And if I can help you in some way, I absolutely will. See, you're not going to have the 100 cups of coffee so you can manipulate someone. You're going to have the 100 cups of coffee so you can build a trusting relationship. And you may never do business with them. And you may never do a project with them. And you may never do anything with them. But you've built a trusting relationship with a person of influence. And I got to believe that could be of benefit. Don't forget, questions@rmwbleaders.ca, or you can put it in the chat box. Okay, questions@rmwbleaders.ca, or you can put it in the chat box. We got 11 minutes left. Don't be asking me, like you guys always do, don't be asking me a ton of questions in the last 3 minutes. Don't do that. Ask the questions now. Because I'm stopping at 4:15. I am. You say, why is that? Because I got to get on a plane to Whistler. I'm flying to Whistler. Right? So, no jacking around. I'm flying to Whistler, so I got to be done at 4:15. If you go into it hoping to get something out of it, beyond just building that relationship, then yeah, now you're manipulating. Now you're a manipulator. Instead, I'm just trying to understand. And that works with employees, and that works with community-based activities. That works in your house. That works in the halls of government. It works. The community builder understands that the times require a different approach. The talker is not going to be as successful today as the listener. The talker is not as successful today as the listener. Because we're in that user-driven society. So that 100 cups of coffee strategy is about proactively identifying the people of influence and proactively going and building the relationship with them. Yeah, but I don't know them. But you know somebody that does. I don't know the High Commissioner from Ghana, the ambassador from Ghana to Canada. I don't know him. So I just sent out an email and said, does anybody know this guy? And I had a couple of people. One specific was like, yeah, I can set up a meeting for you tomorrow. I'm like, good, please do, because we're doing a project in Ghana. Now, is that because I'm brilliant? No, it's because I understand a fundamental thing. That person who set me up or is setting me up with that meeting, I've helped them on numerous occasions for no other reason than to help them. We have met many, many, many times, and yet we haven't never necessarily done anything, a project of mine. But on numerous projects that they've done, I've tried to assist in any way I can. Because I listened. I listened. I heard a story from someone that's going through this program. They told me that they just started a new business development opportunity because they listened at a conference to a person standing in the buffet line. They were standing in the buffet line. They emailed me. They said, Ian, I was standing in the buffet line. And this guy ahead of me was just talking about the frustrations he was having and his company was having. And I just listened. And I nodded and I listened. I nodded and I listened. He said, I did 80% of the listening, 20% of the talking. And then we both went back to the same table and I kept listening. By the end of the time, the guy looked at me and said, in the email, this person told me, the guy looked at me and said, you really understand what we're going through. And this person responded, yeah, that's because we have services that could assist you. Really? You've just listened this whole time and didn't try to sell me something? No, I really wanted to understand. But if you'd like me to explain to you some ideas that we have and some ways that we've solved the same problem that you're having, I'd be happy to do that. Notice, didn't sell, just listened. Let's build a relationship. And the guy just closed a big deal. Big deal because the guy said, you didn't try to sell me anything. So this is applicable in trying to do a project in Ghana, or this is applicable in trying to get new business development going. Understand the needs, wants, and desires of the people of influence, not necessarily prominence, and you're going to be highly successful. As you listen to understand them, and then and only then, when they give you permission, do you talk about what you're attempting to do, and then try to gain alignment. And if there isn't alignment, just say, doesn't look like there's any alignment here, no big deal. I'm just glad we got to know each other. I'm just glad I built community. Okay, so we're going to have the cutoff for questions here in just a second because I'm going to go on a soliloquy. I got a little soliloquy planned. That means I'm going to talk blue streak for a couple minutes. Listening. Strategy for building relationships so that those relationships, you can exert influence to act as a catalyst for change. Now you, style, communication, or leadership. Are you an energizer, a nurturer? Are you a organizer? What are you? What are those around you? What's your communication style? And what is the communication style of others? And can you adjust your style to meet theirs? You go get feedback about your performance proactively. You look at that feedback. You may have to adjust your communication style. You may have to adjust your leadership style. You may have to adjust. In adjusting, you know you're going to build respect. In adjusting, you might even build the people's admiration of you. But in adjusting, you know you've got a better opportunity to be relatable and be likable. These are keys today. One thing that we didn't get to in our time together that I told you we would talk about today is people's reaction to change. Now later down the road, I'm going to give you a model to institute organizational change. Change within a department or within a group. But for today, I just want to plant some seed. People's reaction to change. I'm going to talk about these, and then you ask yourself, yeah, how do I react to change? Could be different in different circumstances and different aspects of your life. But listen to this. First of all, there's 5 reactions to change. Only 5. And they boil down to just 5. 1, what I call early risers. These are people that like change. They enjoy change. They appreciate change. Fact is, they try to make change happen for the sake of changing. You know them. They get an itchy foot. They want to go on vacation. They want to rearrange the house and the furniture, and they just like changing things. Oh, it's stale. It's been like this for a long time. It's been like this for a month and a half. I know, but we got to change it. You know somebody like that? Early risers. Then what I call early adapters. These are people that are good with change. They're comfortable with change. They don't mind change. But you know what? They'd like an explanation. Why exactly are we changing? Please explain that to me. They would like you to unpack it a little bit. What's the purpose and the point of the change? If you give them a logical explanation of the change, they'll probably be on board. No problems. Then the third reaction to change, the crowd. Now, next to that, you could write this, sheeple. These are the sheep people. Now, I don't mean to be disparaging at all, but these are the people that are like, yeah, okay, whatever, no big deal. Whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. And if the group is pulling negative, they'll pull negative. If the group is pulling positive, they'll pull positive. But make no mistake, they're non-committal, and they'll go either way. Sheeple, sheep people. Now, before you judge them, just remember, you and I have been those people sometimes in certain circumstances, in certain times in our life. Then you have what I call the legitimizer. This is the individual that gains their legitimacy because they will do and say what the crowd is not willing to do and say. The legitimizer comes off sometimes as a resistor. That is true. Because they ask pointed questions. Because they stand up and say things that no one else will say. They seem to be gumming up the works, stirring up the poop. Oh, really, they care. I mean, they care in a real and meaningful and profound way. They care. That's why they ask the question at the end of the meeting when everybody wants to leave. That's why they ask for clarification in that email. That's why they seem to be gumming up the works and stirring up the poop. Not because they're a resistor, but because they deeply care about the initiative, the organization, the community, the whatever. But sometimes we approach them as a resistor. If we're smart, we'll realize that they have a lot of sway with that crowd. Finally, the resistor. It is completely unrealistic to believe that somebody, anybody, is going to get 100% buy-in from a stakeholder group. Ain't going to happen. It's unrealistic. You're going to have people that just resist. And whether they resist because it comes out of your mouth, or they resist because they had a bad divorce, or they resist because their kid is going through rehab and the only stable thing in their life is their job, they resist. And they resist. Have you been that person? I know I have. Now, you don't want to put people in a box. This is fluid. It could change from circumstance, and it could change from scenario, and it could change from time in your life and season in your life. But I would suggest to you, before we try to implement any kind of a change, it's probably best to think a little bit about the stakeholder group. A little bit about how people size up and what you think the reaction to change may be. That exploration can start with you. How are you reacting to the changes that are going on? Early riser, woo, let's change. Resistor, grumpy. Or sheeple, it doesn't matter, whatever, I don't care. You have a finite amount of time, a finite amount of energy, and a finite amount of effort at your disposal. Those are not unlimited to you. They are finite. So it would seem to me that if you did a mathematical equation, you would come to realize that really you should put your time and energy where? The resistor. No. The legitimizer. Because the legitimizer has the greatest sway with the crowd. Well, how do I know if they're a legitimizer and a resistor? That when you give them information and it's logical and it's reasonable and you can make your case and you can lay it out, you understand their needs, wants, and desires, you can show it how it's in alignment, when they still resist, then they're a resistor. But when you've answered their questions, when you've seemingly satisfied their objections, and they don't resist, they go, oh, I get it now. They're on board, then they were a legitimizer. Down the road, when I talk to you about this process to implement change, these will come in, they'll be very important. But the agent of change proactively looks at and asks themselves, how are people going to react to this change we're about to make? How are people going to react to this thing we're about to do? We're smart, we're savvy, we're strategic. And we understand that people have different reactions to change. Now, what we do with that, we'll talk about down the road. But for now, I just want you to look introspectively within yourself. Okay. Agent of change understands, demonstrates, and exerts influence by building trusting relationships to act as a catalyst for change. When we get together next Wednesday, there in Sequoia, in Janvier, we're going to talk about the big picture, holistic systems thinker. You're going to get a ton of information, not only in that time that we're together, but during that 3 weeks. You won't possibly be able to assimilate all that information in the 3-week period, and you're not meant to. There will be a lot more information than you'll be able to take in. And so you're going to pick out those things that are most relevant to you. Motivation, a system for motivation, a system for delegation. A system for time management or maximizing utilization of your time, a system to come up with a creative idea. So we're going to, a system for fundraising if you're a community-based organization, a system for recruiting volunteers. In the case of those of you that manage people, a system for managing poor performance. So obviously you won't, in the 3-week period, be able to assimilate all those systems. So you're just going to have to pick out the ones that fit you best and work with you best. Okay? All right, we've come to the end of our time together. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. And I want you, if you haven't sent out that survey, please do. Because the other thing we're going to start doing, not this Monday but the next Monday, it's going to be time to pick out your one thing. And once you want to have some of that feedback so you could pick your one thing. Have a great weekend. Love you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.